The mountain air was crisp, clean, and unspoiled. That was why I bought this land, miles away from the suburbs, perched on a rocky ridge overlooking valleys of pine forests and rivers glistening like silver ribbons. I spent 15 years designing my mansion, every stone and beam a reflection of my dream. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls gave me views of the horizon, and balconies curved like the wings of an eagle. It wasn't just a house. It was a fortress of solitude. When I first closed the deal, the realtor reassured me with a laugh. No HOA, no committees, no nosy neighbors measuring your grass. This is private land, completely free. And that was all I needed to hear. For years, I lived in peace, restoring vintage cars in my garage, hosting friends under the stars, and building trails through the forest behind my home. Until one morning, a letter appeared on my gate. A heavy cream envelope with a golden seal, notice of outstanding fees, $42,380 due immediately. I thought it was a scam. I laughed, tore it up, and threw it in the fire. But within weeks, more arrived. By the third month, they weren't just letters anymore, they were threats. I discovered that a new HOA had formed in the valley below, covering a sprawling luxury development. They called themselves the Summit Heights Homeowners Association. The name alone made me sick. They claimed their district boundaries extended up the mountain, right to where my mansion stood. Impossible. My deed was crystal clear, private land, outside any subdivision. But when I confronted them, they pulled out a map they had drawn themselves, a convenient red line snaking up the ridge and circling my property. When I refused to pay, they escalated. HOA board members started showing up uninvited, clipboards in hand, snapping photos of my home. One accused me of violating community guidelines by having a stone exterior that didn't match their neighborhood aesthetic. Another sneered about unauthorized landscaping, because I had wildflowers instead of neatly cut grass. The president, a sharp-faced woman named Ellen, delivered the final blow one afternoon. Standing in my driveway, she smirked and said, "Sir, if you refuse to pay, corrective action will be taken. We don't need your permission." I told her to get off my land before I called the sheriff. She laughed as if she owned the mountain. I didn't know it yet, but she already had bulldozers lined up. It started with the sound of engines. I thought maybe a construction crew was working nearby. But when I stepped outside, my blood ran cold. A convoy of heavy machinery crawled up my mountain road, bulldozers, excavators, dump trucks. Behind them marched a small army of workers in neon vests. And in the middle of it all, Ellen, holding her clipboard like a crown. I ran to the gate, waving my deed, shouting that this was private land. I called the sheriff's office, begging for them to come immediately. When deputies arrived, I thought justice would be on my side. But after a short conversation with Ellen, they turned to me and said the words that made my knees weak. "Sir, this is a civil matter. We can't intervene." I was powerless. With one wave of her hand, Ellen gave the order. The bulldozers roared forward. Metal jaws smashed through my gates. My garage crumpled under the force of the first machine. Glass walls shattered as excavators tore into the mansion. The sound was deafening, beams cracking, stone splitting, the dream I had built collapsing in clouds of dust. By sundown, the house was gone. Nothing but rubble. Ellen walked up to me, smiling as though she'd just won a prize, and handed me a slip of paper. Demolition fees, $120,000. Pay immediately. I stared at her, speechless, fists trembling. That night, I sat among the ruins of my home, breathing in the smoke of my destroyed life. They thought they had broken me. But what they had really done was awaken me. Revenge became my full-time job. By day, I sifted through rubble, salvaging what little was left. By night, I researched every detail of the Summit Heights HOA. I filed records requests with the county, dug into zoning maps, and searched court filings. Soon, I found cracks in their foundation. Their expansion of boundaries? Fraudulent. They had bribed a zoning officer to approve it. Their finances? A disaster. Dues collected from homeowners were being siphoned into shell companies owned by Ellen's relatives. Their so-called community funds? Spent on luxury vacations and private clubs. I wasn't the only victim. Dozens of homeowners had been fined into bankruptcy, their properties seized and resold. I hired a private investigator, who uncovered even darker truths: tax evasion, money laundering, and secret political donations to keep regulators quiet. And then I struck back. I gathered homeowners in secret meetings, showing them proof of the corruption. I leaked documents to local journalists. I sent entire files to the state attorney general's office and the IRS. But I didn't stop at exposing them. Through shell companies, I quietly bought out liens, mortgages, and debts tied to HOA board members. Within months, their financial stability crumbled. The same people who had taken my mansion were now losing theirs. The pressure built until it finally exploded. News stations ran exposés titled HOA Corruption on the Mountain. Homeowners filed lawsuits en masse. Regulators launched investigations. Ellen and her cronies were dragged into courtrooms, cameras flashing, faces pale with fear. One by one, their empire collapsed. But the final blow came when I petitioned the state to dissolve the HOA district entirely. With hundreds of signatures and piles of evidence, the Attorney General had no choice but to act. On a cold morning nearly 1 year after my mansion was destroyed, the state announced: the Summit Heights HOA is officially dissolved. Their district no longer exists. It was gone. Wiped clean off the state map. I returned to my mountain. The mansion was rubble, but the land was mine again, free of their control, free of their arrogance. I stood where my living room once was, staring at the horizon, and whispered. You tried to erase me. Instead, I erased you. The HOA was history. Their greed and corruption buried beneath the weight of their own crimes. And I was finally free.